Los Angeles has always been a city of dreams. Bright lights, red carpets, and the promise that tomorrow might change everything. But sometimes, the most life-altering moments happen in silence. On a quiet February night in 2001, in a modest home tucked into the Hollywood Hills, a young woman prepared for what should have been an exciting evening out. She was 22 years old. She had plans. She had a future. By morning, that future was gone. And what followed would ripple through Hollywood, courtrooms, and conversations about safety for years to come. This is the story of Ashley Ellerin and the long, complicated path toward justice. Ashley Lauren Ellerin was born in 1978 and raised in California. Friends described her as warm, ambitious, and full of possibility. She was studying fashion design and working part-time, navigating the complicated but hopeful world of young adulthood in Los Angeles. At 22, she was building the life she wanted, creative, social, and independent. Like many young people in Hollywood at the time, Ashley moved within a circle that brushed up against the entertainment industry. She had recently begun seeing actor Ashton Kutcher, who was on the rise in his career. But it's important to pause here. Ashley's identity should never be reduced to who she dated. She was not simply the girlfriend of a celebrity. She was a daughter, a sister, a student, and a young woman charting her own path. Those who knew her said she loved design, loved being with friends, and believed the future was wide open. On February 21st, 2001, she made plans to attend a post-Grammy party. She was excited. It was supposed to be an ordinary night in a city that thrives on ordinary nights turning extraordinary. Instead, it became the last night of her life. The evening began like many others. Ashley spent the day preparing for her plans. She was expected to go out later that night. At some point in the evening, communication with her stopped. When she did not show up for her plans and could not be reached, concern slowly turned into alarm. The next day, a roommate returned home and made a discovery that would set a criminal investigation in motion. Authorities responded to Ashley's Hollywood home. It was quickly determined that her death was not accidental. For her family, the shock was indescribable. For investigators, the case presented both urgency and complexity. Los Angeles in the early 2000s was no stranger to violent crime, but this case, because of the location, the victim's age, and the celebrity connection, would soon draw intense attention. At the time, investigators worked with the evidence available. Leads were followed, interviews were conducted, but despite early efforts, the case stalled. Years passed, and for Ashley's family, time did not soften the loss. In the immediate aftermath, detectives examined the scene, collected forensic evidence, and canvassed the neighborhood. They searched for patterns, similar incidents, similar methods, similar suspects. Early on, there were persons of interest, but evidence sufficient for a conviction did not immediately emerge. One name eventually surfaced: Michael Gargiulo. Gargiulo had a history that, over time, revealed troubling patterns. He had lived in close proximity to multiple women who were later attacked or killed. In fact, he would later become known in media coverage as the Hollywood Ripper, a nickname that investigators themselves did not use, but that reflected the geographic clustering of the crimes. What made this case particularly complex was timing. In 2008, Gargiulo was arrested in connection with a separate homicide. As investigators began looking deeper into his past, they discovered connections that pointed back to 2001, to Ashley. Advancements in forensic technology, including DNA analysis, played a significant role. Evidence collected years earlier could now be examined with greater precision. Cold cases often hinge on patience and progress. In 2011, a grand jury indicted Gargiulo for Ashley Ellerin's murder, along with additional charges related to other victims. The trial began in 2019. Nearly 2 decades after Ashley's death, her family finally saw the case presented before a jury. Actor Ashton Kutcher testified about the night he had plans to meet Ashley. His testimony was calm and factual, describing the timeline as he remembered it. His presence brought renewed media attention, but the courtroom remained focused on the evidence. In 2019, Gargiulo was convicted of Ashley's murder and additional charges involving other victims. In 2021, he was sentenced to death in California. For Ashley's family, the verdict did not erase the years of absence, but it marked the end of a long and painful wait for accountability. Cases like this invite deeper reflection. How does someone live undetected for years while harboring violent intent? How do patterns form, and how are they missed? Criminal behavior experts often note that individuals who commit repeated acts of violence may exhibit early warning signs: boundary violations, fixation on control, or an ability to compartmentalize. To neighbors and acquaintances, such individuals may appear ordinary. They hold jobs, they engage socially, they blend in. This duality can be deeply unsettling. In Gargiulo's case, investigators later described a pattern of proximity, living near victims, observing routines, inserting himself into environments without raising suspicion. There's a psychological dimension to crimes of this nature that often centers around power and intrusion. The act is less about rage and more about control, about crossing boundaries that society holds sacred. But equally important is the psychology of delay in justice. Cold cases can leave families in suspended grief. Without resolution, healing becomes complicated. Every holiday, every birthday becomes a reminder not only of loss, but of unanswered questions. Ashley's family lived in that space for years, and yet they continued to advocate for accountability, to show up in court, and to speak about Ashley as a person, not just a case file. That persistence matters, because justice, even delayed, affirms the value of a life. Ashley Ellerin's case intersected with Hollywood culture in ways that amplified its reach. The involvement of a rising actor meant media attention was immediate and, at times, intense. But beyond headlines, the case highlighted broader concerns about safety, particularly for young women living alone in urban environments. It also underscored the importance of forensic preservation. Evidence collected in 2001 became critical nearly 2 decades later. Without proper storage and documentation, technological advances would have meant little. The case became part of a larger conversation about serial offenders who operate across jurisdictions. It demonstrated how patterns may only become visible when cases are connected, sometimes years apart. And perhaps most significantly, it reinforced the idea that time does not erase responsibility. Cold case units across the country often cite cases like Ashley's as reminders that progress in technology can reopen doors once thought closed. For families waiting for answers, that hope is invaluable. In cities like Los Angeles, stories move quickly, headlines flash, names trend, attention shifts. But for families, loss does not move on. Ashley Ellerin was 22 years old. She had plans for that night, plans that seemed ordinary at the time, ordinary plans that should have led to an ordinary tomorrow. Her story reminds us that behind every criminal case is a human being, a life interrupted, a family changed forever. It also reminds us of something quieter, but equally important. Persistence matters. Evidence matters. Patience matters. Justice is not always immediate, but sometimes, even after years of silence, truth finds its way back to the surface. If stories like Ashley's move you, if you believe thoughtful reflection is just as important as headlines, consider subscribing for more in-depth, respectful crime analysis that centers on people, not sensationalism. Because every story deserves to be told with care, and every life deserves to be remembered.